to the channel. Watch list time. This is 5 recent watches that I'm looking to recommend to you. And can I just say, this month has some absolutely otherworldly great films to talk about. And I'm going to start with probably one of the weirdest and most wonderful films that I've seen in many years. And it's Innocence from Mark Jenkins, who is a Cornish filmmaker who is very famed for having a very novel and individual filmmaking style. He shoots in a very, small, old-style camera, 16mm, and then does all of the sound in post-production. So all of the voice work, all of the sound effects are all done after the fact. And I can think of no better example that he's done this than this film here, Innocence. Now, I can't even really tell you what Innocence is about because it is very much a mood piece film where you're supposed to take away what you feel from it. But suffice to say, it follows this journey of this woman who lives in a very remote part of Cornwall, and she seems to have a job of recording temperature and monitoring growth of various crops, etc. that are in there. But it's just full of weird imagery of events that seem to have come before, events that maybe happen in the future, characters that come in and out of life. You're not really sure how it goes, and I would say for most of the runtime you'll be left confused as to actually what you think is going on. And I think it's just at the end that a lot of it will come together, except I don't know that if any two people will come to exactly the same conclusion from it. Now, for some people, that kind of art house cinema leaves them absolutely cold and scratching their heads. And certainly if you've ever felt like that in some movies, this is the most extreme version of that, because Innocence does this too. Well, it turns it up to 11 really. But there's just something utterly wonderful about it. You will see a lot of influences from other filmmakers. I mean, this pose in the front is very Wicker Man-esque, as Mark Kermode says in the commentary. I think there's a lot of Rogue in here. There's a lot of interesting colour work that you can relate to a lot of different filmmakers, and I think all in all I just was fascinated by this. Now, I will say I loved Bait as well, and Bait sometimes leaves people a bit cold. If you didn't like Bait, you're not going to like this. In fact, you're almost certainly going to hate it. But if you like Bait and are willing to give Jenkins a chance, and you're fascinated by his filmmaking process, you'll find a disc full of things to get your teeth into. It shows making sounds, etc. within his workshop. It is one of the most fully featured discs that you can ever hope to see. It even includes one of those Children's Film Foundation pieces around the mines in Cornwall. It's utterly brilliant. Early contender for Blu-ray release of the year for me, without a doubt. Next up is Welcome to the Dollhouse by Todd Solondz, part of Radiance Film by number 3 just. Okay. And this was an introduction for me really to Todd Solondz kind of interconnected world of cinema. Something I wasn't really aware of. It kind of fits very nicely alongside something like Dinner in America, what I would say kind of counterculture, and looking at the people that stand in the background in most films, the kind of people that are forgotten about. And in that way, you're talking about our main character here, who is somebody that is at school, that is often the butt of people's jokes, but trying to find their own place in life in the typical normal ways that teenage girls and boys do, taking a shining to older brother friends, trying to find their own place in their own life, and all the while having a sort of troubled relationship with siblings along the way. All this sort of darkly comedic effect. I think there's some really interesting drama at play here, except the film doesn't ever seem to take it as seriously as you, the viewer, do. I think that's a really interesting way to play with cinema, and a really interesting way to approach certain subject matter in that, like I say, in that darkly comic sense. I think this is a lot of fun, and it definitely put me in mind to go and visit more of Solond's work. And again, the disc just goes into depth into what Solond's work is, what he sets out to do, and who he is as a person. I think this is a really easy recommend from the Radiance line. Sometimes it's a bit too art house, but this is straight in the middle, one that I think most people will get something out of. Next up is a film that I watched actually last night, and it's from the Altered Innocence, which is a Vinegar Syndrome partner label, and also Radiance partner label. They've only done the one release here, and this hasn't been out yet. This is from Ferret Carahan. This is Brother's Keeper, and it tells the story of this young boy who lives in a boarding school with all male boarding school young men, very rowdy, and it's almost like a borstal. They are treated really badly, no real quality of life, and with kind of supervisors and teachers who are looking at them as, you know, the worst versions of themselves. Now, they are young men, so they are very mischievous, but we follow this young character Yusuf as he wakes up in the morning and he finds that his friend beside him in bed, Mo, is kind of non-responsive and not very well. And this is set in the Kurdish region. At the time that it's happening, there's a very grave snowstorm coming along, and as we just wonder about why this young man is sick and the mystery that goes with that, what is wrong with him. He doesn't have a fever, but what is wrong with him? And then the worry that this young boy has for his friend, and then wrapped up in that, the kind of administration of this very, you know, poor boarding school. You know, there's not an awful lot of money about it, but everybody who's kind of supervising these people is kind of looking out for themselves in some way, and there's a sort of lack of humanity in a place where there doesn't seem to be anybody cares about anybody else, and in a place where the snow is coming down thick. It's another one of those tension-filled dramas that I seem to have watched an awful lot of recently, and this is as good as any of them. It maybe doesn't wrap up quite as nicely as I would like towards the end, but you get a real interesting insight into a different part of the world and a culture, and for me that is the very epitome of what I'm looking for in world cinema. Give me a place in the world that I've never seen a film about, from a group of people that aren't doing that, haven't been shown to me before, and in the middle of it there's very subtle commentary about, you know, this poverty and about place and class, and actually how, you know, children are a commodity in order to save the rest of the family. All very subtly done, not really the main point of the movie, but one that I think is very interestingly explored here. But I will say there really isn't much else on the disc. There's a trailer and that's about it, but a really interesting watch of a film, and, you know, nice slipcover as well. That is Brother's Keeper. We're going to finish in two films here that I think are both phenomenal. The first one is from MUBI, and is their most recent release, and it's from Lucas DeHont, and it is Close. Now, I wanted to do a separate review just for Close, but the problem with Close is, for me to do a review on it, I would have to spoil a lot of it. So what can I say about Close? Close follows these two young men and their friendship, you know, a very young male friendship, and it's only when they go to school together that this gets prompted and probed into people thinking it's a different type of relationship than what they establish. And for both of them coming into those formative years of malehood, they're swapping their innocence for, you know, the more grown up look at their friendship and how close they are. You know, they sleep in each other's houses very regularly. They're very regular visitors to each other's houses. They're very well known. They're very tight. But this question from the outside world puts a spotlight on it that neither of them really work well with. You know, both of them recoil in slightly different ways, and it's only when that friendship gets threatened and tested that we get a real exploration of character. And I cannot think of a movie that does, for such a long period, examines the ideas of guilt and people bottling up in emotions inside and not speaking about them and being afraid to, and they know the consequences themselves of what happens as soon as they speak. I've seen a lot of reviews of this saying, oh, it didn't go where I wanted it to. I don't think the intention of this movie is to go to the place that a lot of people think it should, but the film does and presents to you, I think, is done incredibly well. There is a scene with two of the characters that builds up that you want the whole way through the film, and when it finally happens, nary a word is spoken, but what words are spoken are incredibly powerful. It is absolutely heart-wrenching, but not in the 5-minute section towards the end of the payoff. In a long run, I think Close is utterly brilliant. It is the very core of what I love in dramatic filmmaking, and a film that doesn't do too much with what is very sensitive kind of material that it could have done. It could have been bombastic, it could have been bigger, but let's celebrate it for what it is. It's an utterly brilliant film, but it mightn't be as good as my last film. And I'm cheating a little bit here because this wasn't a first time watch for me. I seen this in the cinema around the year, which might give you some idea as to the kind of things that I may have seen in the cinema, because I have I suppose it's getting a longer and longer list of filmmakers, current filmmakers that I absolutely adore and that I will rush out the door to see anything that I want to see. And probably top of that list is Mr. Coriata, and this is Broker. So, Hirakazu Coriata tends to tell stories of weird and wonderful family makeups. So people that are put together that are not usually put together. Broker tells a story, well, it starts with a young lady arriving at a box where she deals with her baby. She gives the baby up for adoption to a place that looks after it, and they put them inside a small box at the start. It's a very cold and kind of forthright but anonymous way with which to leave your child over. But the baby never makes it into this solitude of the church that has taken them in. It is sort of abducted by two men who are sort of unofficial brokers for people looking for babies in adoption. So they're making their money as like a sideline. It's a very seedy way to look into that world, but in typical Coriata style, he doesn't delay on the seediness. He kind of presents these people as flawed, and that society is sort of the problem creating this issue. Now, I'd say most notably, Coriata is a Japanese filmmaker, but this is a Korean film. And from listening to Coriata speak about this, it's very much the opportunity to work with Song Kang-ho, who most people will know from Parasite as an actor. And he has this desire to work with as many great actors and performers that he can, and he will do films in different languages and with which to achieve that. And Broker is just typical Coriata. It is so touching when you see the interaction of people that aren't really family, but in much the same way as like something like Shoplifters, if you've seen it, this kind of put together family, and sometimes those made families can be even closer than the real thing, especially when this baby is at the center of it and nobody really owns him, but they're trying to profit off. It's just utterly brilliant. And I've watched a lot of these PictureHouse releases recently. This, thankfully, as you see, says special edition. This is one of the most fully featured, because often the PictureHouse releases are very, there's nothing to them. This one has the making of Broker, behind the scenes with visual commentary by the director, a cast featurette, an interview with the director, and an interview with Duna Bay, who a lot of people will recognise from other things and other films that they've seen as well. I think Broker is in the very short list for the best films that I've seen this year, that are from this year, and I very much encourage anybody that's a Coriata film and likes his style of film making and storytelling, especially about those weird amount of families, to rush out and get this. It's a great disc, it's a great film, and one that I heartily recommend, and that's my watch list for this week. Have you seen any of these? It's very recentish kind of feel, an awful lot of these, not kind of stepping back in time very much, but I wanted to do an episode where I showcased kind of more modern releases or things that have come out more recently for you to enjoy, rather than step back in time. That might give me the push to do something in the coming weeks and months with that. And let me know what you've been watching yourself, anything that reminds you of anything in this list, let me know, and I'll speak to you again soon on the channel. Remember, you can check out more watch list videos. There's over 50 of them for you to watch, for more recommendations, mostly done groups of 5. I'll see you again soon on the channel. Take care, all the best, bye.